In this video I'm going to be riding the Nutcracker trail on Dartmoor. The start of the trail goes along this long gravel road. Then we can start the uphill climbing. This section doesn't last for very long but is a little bit challenging but not very rocky or slippy. Then we can go down our first small bit of downhill. This doesn't last for long but is nice after the hill. Then there's another long piece of uphill. This is quite challenging and rocky, so watch your wheels so you don't slide out. If you have grippy tyres, it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Along this trail there's loads of mini gaps in it, so you can have a look at the sheep and also have a look at the amazing view that you'll get when riding it. If we continue a bit further up the hill, we get to one of my favourite sections. This is like insane! There's a really nice view to show you where you've come from. Although it was a little bit foggy, it was a really nice view and I'd like to cycle up this hill again, just for that view. Now let's continue further down the trail. This is like insane! The view! So nice! Let's keep going up the hill. Sorry about the water on the lens, as it was raining a lot I couldn't really do much. I tried to clean it as much as possible. Once I started falling back, I knew what was about to happen. That was a fail. Once we got to the top of the hill, it was very windy, but there were some nice views. The rocks are just about to start, they're not very big, they're quite flat and they're not too much of a problem. After this it flattens out again, but after that there's loads more technical features and sections. We are now about to start the more technical features and there's a few jumps on our way. This is where the terrain starts to get a lot more taxing. There are some sharp and slippy rocks, so try not to have a puncture. If you don't have a spare tube, it's a long walk back to the car. All along this section you can add in extra pedal strokes, so then you go a lot faster, but isn't necessary as it's on a slight downhill. This section is quite flat and fun, soon it's a lot more technical. The rocks here don't really add a technical feature to the trail, as they're quite far underground and they're quite flat on top. You will also have to look out for people walking on the trail, as it isn't just for mountain bikers. But after you've got past all the people, there's loads of really fun sections which you can enjoy. Here is where the terrain starts to step it up a notch. You can see that there are loads more rocks on the trail, and this part is all about picking the correct line. If you don't pick the correct line, you are most likely to go very slow down the trail. You will need to have your arms and legs ready to move so then you can absorb the shocks from the rocks. Although this looks like I'm going very slow, it's really technical terrain, so I assure you, if you're really working hard you can go a bit faster, but otherwise you might be going quite slow like me, especially if it's your first time down the trail. There are also loads of amazing views which you can see along this trail. There are hundreds of sections where you can find these. Here there is a small rock garden, but soon the entire trail becomes a rock garden. From the GoPro you can barely tell how many rocks there are all along this trail. Although this trail isn't the flowiest, it's a good challenge to test your abilities going over long rock gardens. There are also every now and again an uphill to ensure you get the most out of your downhill sections. It's hard to tell whether some parts of the trail are really technical until you ride it. The uphills which you have to take on the rocks are really challenging. This will push yourself to your limits and are very slippy. Even with my 27 plus tyres, I was slipping a bit. You can see that there's a wall to the left of you. As long as you follow this wall for most of the trail, you shouldn't get too lost. This is where the trail starts to get a bit more rockier and a bit slippier and steeper. You will also need to watch out for the big boulders on the trail, as you might crash into them, and they're quite a challenge if you do, as you might damage your rim or you might bottom out your suspension. After you've crashed into the boulder, we can keep going. Here is where the trail starts to get a lot steeper and a lot more rockier. On some parts of the trail there are also some really close rocks together. These rocks are usually a bit challenging as you don't always want to whack your disc brake on them, otherwise you might not be able to ride anymore. Now we're going to get on one of the most technical sections of the trail. The camera doesn't really show justice to how rocky and slippy this section of trail is. There are loads of rocks at off-putting angles, so you might fall over it easier, but also it's really steep and hard to ride, so let's see what it's like. We start off by going into a sharp corner. Then we can continue down the not so tricky section, but then it gets a lot more technical. There are some roots facing forward, so if it's in the wet you're most likely to slide down and lose traction on this section. We start off by going onto some flat rocks, then some more janky rocks. That is now the end of this technical section of trail. Now let's see what's further down the trail. Unfortunately, it's a bit of uphill, so get your climbing legs on. We only have a few more meters left of downhill, so before you go up, enjoy this section. For this section you need to be ready to move, but nowhere near as much as the last section before this. There are also some pretty washed out berms, so try not to slide down the rest of the hill. Make sure to be careful of your chain rings on this and your pedals, as there's some big rocks which you might not be able to see, or you might just fall into and your chain ring gets smashed. Like me. After a long time of pushing up the hill, we luckily have a bit more downhill. This section is one of the more flowy sections and you can start to pick up some more speed. Although there is the old rock or root around in some places, it's not too much of a challenge and you can use it as some jumps if you want. This section has a few berms, but they're not as big as some berms in bike parks or trails. This section has some really big rocks, so you want to be picking the right line. If you don't know how to pick the right line or want to check your skills on picking the right line, my video will be linked up in the top right of your screen and in the description below. This section is really rocky and slidey, so be warned and make sure you have some grippy tyres and are ready for the brakes. When I got to the very bottom of the river, I reached a bridge which was called the Old Clam Bridge. This bridge was very slippery and thin, but it was quite fun to walk across. For obvious reasons, I didn't cycle across it. But I cycled down the other bridge. Then you cycle all the way back uphill to the very top where you started and back to the car. Now you're at the end of the trail. I hope you found this video useful or at least entertaining. As always in my map related videos, I'll leave the map down in the description below. If there's any trails you want me to ride or have a look at, make sure to ask me down below. Same with any questions about this trail. Thank you for watching this video, make sure to like and subscribe and I'll see you in my next video.